www.MVRemix.com. The last time I saw you perform was when you were in Vancouver at the end of October, and you spoke about basically how you were confident that Bush wasn't going to get re-elected. How do you feel since his reinstatement?
Well, I suppose not very confident.
What are your feelings about what has been going on in the past few months?
I feel like this journey that we're on to try to demilitarize our nation. And when I speak of that, I speak of those of us who are opposed to the war and opposed to the Bush agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Is a long haul, and I don't feel like we necessarily lost a huge battle by electing John Kerry.
Yeah.
I feel like even if Kerry was in office, he was still shouting the same things that Bush was, only in kind of kinder and gentler way. And I think
I can understand that.
the only way that things are really going to change, having my own experience in Iraq and in the Middle East, is that when things get so bad that everybody says it can't continue.
Mm-hmm.
The Vietnam War didn't end until 50,000 Americans were killed. And I'm hoping that we don't have to get to that point before we see the death of 175,000 Iraqi civilians is too many.
Yeah, that would be a tragedy. Who conceived the idea for the documentary I Know I'm Not Alone?
I was sitting on my tour bus one day with my friend Doug, and he asked me a kind of facetious question, but he meant it. He said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And after a couple days of thinking about it, I came back to him and I said, I'd like to be the best communicator of social justice that I can be. And he said, "Well, what does that mean?" And I said, "Well, it means being a skilled songwriter. It means, putting the fans first always, and it means, going and seeing places firsthand that I'm writing songs about."
Mm-hmm.
If I gave you a plane ticket and all you had to do is fill in the name of the city, where would you go? And I just blurted out Baghdad. And so I talked to my manager, Catherine, and she there, and I just went. Wasn't with any sources. We did a couple benefits that day in San Francisco and raised money.
Did the whole group head over, or?
No, I asked the whole group if they wanted to come, but nobody felt really passionately that it was worth taking the risk.
How long did it last in total, your stay over there?
I was there for 2 weeks, traveling around the Middle East between Jordan, Iraq, and Israel and Palestine.
Now, the version which you did show at Slamdance was dubbed as a work in progress. Is the documentary now finished, and how does the current version differ to the one you showed?
When I was in Israel and Palestine, I really spent most of my time in Gaza and the West Bank.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the best way to describe it is that Israel is very much the first world, and Gaza and the West Bank is very much the third world. And you have the fourth largest military in the world, which is Israel, controlling a civilian and refugee population in Palestine. And so I spent most of my time there hearing the perspectives of Palestinian people and their hardships, and what it's like to go through, deal with checkpoints every day where you wait hours in the hot sun just to travel 5 blocks, being shot at and having your homes knocked down. But I did speak to Israelis very much about how the war had affected them.
Mm-hmm.
So in February I went back and I spoke to mothers of Israeli soldiers who have had their sons and daughters killed, and people whose cafe had been bombed and a suicide attack. I spoke to a rabbi who was working to end were crazy Muslim fanatic terrorists.
Sorry, excuse me. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So going with that, was that this last February you're referring to?
Pardon?
Was that this past February that you were referring to?
Just went, like, that last month, yeah.
And so was that also filmed, or was that more of just a personal
I filmed
thing?
it, and that's what we're including in the film now.
Mm-hmm.
I just felt that it was important in bringing up the issue of the conflict that you show both Palestinian voices and Israeli voices. The film that we had cut before was mainly Palestinian voices, so I want to include Israeli.
Definitely. So what is it that you wish for audiences that will see the final product of the documentary to take from it?
The main thing is that is the human side of war, or maybe not the human side, but the human cost of war, and just how much people suffer in these things that we look at in the paper. You know, it's like when I was in Gaza, I was struck by the fact that anything that happens in the neighborhood that I was in is front page headline. You know,
Mm-hmm.
this is like the poorest neighborhood, you know, one of the most poorest neighborhoods I've ever been in. You know? And but so even though it makes front page headlines, we never hear the voices of those who are affected by it.
Yeah.
So I want people to see the human side of it, and also I want to really show the power of music, and not specifically my music, but the power of music in each of our lives to help us get through difficult times.
Definitely. Which documentaries or pieces inspired you to actually create this?
You know, I've seen very few documentaries,
Mm-hmm.
but as a kid, I was a film freak. You know, I'd go to the theater every Saturday and go to the cheap showing, and I'd see every movie that comes out. I'm still very fanatical about film, and I love the cinema. I love the smell of popcorn, and so it really wasn't about a documentary that I'd seen. It was just really about the experience of being in a theater and being transported to a different world through sights and through music.
Mm-hmm.
And the films that have always sat with me the longest, struck me the most, were things that were about real things. When I'd see something really incredible in a film, and the end of it say this is based on a true story. You know?
Definitely. Now, over your career, who have you most enjoyed meeting, and who has shocked you the most upon the first impressions? Because I was looking amongst some of the photos on your site and such, and I've interviewed a couple of those people, but people like Chuck D and Saul Williams, who has really struck you once you've met them?
I think, Fidel Castro.
Uh-huh. And how did that go about?
I was in Cuba, and we did this big show there with a bunch of American and European artists collaborating with a group of Cuban artists. And it was right at the time when, the weekend, in fact, when the U.S. started bombing Kosovo. And I said I was asked to MC the show, and at a certain point in the show, I said, you know, the American people who brought us here, I said it in Spanish, I said the American people who brought us here asked us to not say anything political when we're on stage. It's just supposed to be this friendship thing. But I said, I've always been a political artist, so I can't not speak about what's happening. I said that I hope that the conflict that is the bombing, you know, the conflict between the U.S. and Cuba doesn't end in the same way of what's happening in Kosovo, and the crowd stood up and cheered. And so afterwards, we were invited in this middle of the night thing. None of us expected it. At 3 in the morning, we went and met with Fidel. We all met her.
That must have been quite the experience. Now, kind of moving on to a lighter note, which artist inspired your live stage show?
Oh man, Fishbone.
Nice.
Fishbone. Jane's Addiction, The Clash, Public Enemy.
Cool.
I used to work in a nightclub before I played music.
Mm-hmm.
Or when I was just starting playing music, and so I saw hundreds of bands. I saw the Flaming Lips, R.E.M., Gangstar, X-Clan.
Quite an eclectic bunch there.
Yeah, and so I saw, but what I saw was the bands that were able to connect with the audience versus the bands that just had a hit.
Yeah.
And sometimes they'd be really anticipating a great show, and then come in there and see that the audience was standing still, and then other times, like the first time I saw Sonic Youth, I was like, oh, who are these guys? I'd heard their record before, and I was like, not my thing. And then I saw their live show, and I was totally blown away and became a fan for life.
Definitely, the live show is very important. So, tell me a little bit about Australia's Love Kamikaze.
Well, in 1998, I started recording songs that became the album Stay Human.
Uh-huh.
But that album was a very political record about the death penalty and about the shutting down of radio stations, and pirate radio stations in America. And so by the end of it, I had written, a bunch of love songs, or songs about sex and love, and I didn't feel like they fit in the context of that Stay Human album, so I just put them away.
Cool.
And then recently I was going through a bunch of cleaning out my studio and playing old demos and old cassettes and stuff, and I heard a batch of those songs, and I was playing it for some people, and they were like, man, you should keep that up. That's a great record. So that's what we did. We just collected a couple remixes from the Stay Human album and a bunch of songs that were about sex and love, and made this album. And all the songs are, it's a very like kind of dance-oriented groove, kind of funky record.
What's currently going on with regards to the new collaboration between yourself and Spearhead, the next album? Is there any news on that?
Yeah, right. We've been in the studio. In February we spent about 2 weeks in Jamaica recording drum and bass tracks with Sly and Robbie.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're in San Francisco and we're doing the keyboards and the guitars and the vocals. And we'll have it in the can by the end of April.
Sounds good.
Come out in August.
Brilliant. Now, I recently interviewed Gifted Gab, and I got this question which I always ask in my interviews, which is sort of one which you have to have fun with. Have you seen the film Fight Club?
Yeah.
Right, there's one little quote in there, which is, if you could fight any celebrity, who would you fight? Now, Gifted Gab said Gary Coleman. I've had Elijah Muhammad, Schwarzenegger, all these different ones. So, if you could fight any celebrity, who would you fight?
I think I'd fight Lee Perry.
Any particular reason?
I think it could be an interesting fight. I can't imagine that it would really be like a fist fight. It would be some kind of like fight on a different level, like a astral fight, kind of a spiritual joust.
Now, would you win?
I think I'm quite certain I'd be slayed. I'd be the dragon and he'd slay me.
So, aside from the documentary and the Spearhead record, are there any other projects you're working on?
Those are pretty much it. We at the moment we're just sitting down to watch a version of the film that is just the Baghdad portion of the movie, because we're considering putting out two films, one about Baghdad and one about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Uh-huh.
Right now we're watching a cut that we did of just Baghdad that we extended, included more footage, and so that there could be two films. And then I wrote 30 songs when I was there and when I came back, so 12 will go on this next album, and we'll probably just keep recording and make another album and have ready to go after that.
Cool. So do you have any last words to your fans or potential fans that are going to be reading this?
Well, I think the main thing is that I believe that music is, is a gift that was given us to us, so that if one person hears a drummer playing a drum in the distance, will run to that person, and maybe the two of them will come together, and the person listening might clap hands or sing, and that the power of the two people coming together is greater than just the drummer sitting alone and playing. And because of that, I still really believe in that really power of the goddess of music.
Mm-hmm.
We should be in service of that, and that file sharing and trading in music online is a very important